When was the last time you watched this movie with an audience?
I don't know if I ever have. It was a long time ago, if I had.
What was it like watching it with a crowd tonight, 50 plus years after you made this movie?
Very strange. In a good way, I guess.
So I guess we'll just kind of get into it. You know, what was the genesis of Messiah Evil, or as it was actually originally called, The Second Coming?
Well, we went through, actually, we went through some title changes even when we were casting the film, because it was called, Messiah of Evil. Somebody else came up with years later. This when we couldn't finish the film and it was taken away and so forth by the original people who had financed it. It was sold about a half dozen times. So somebody somewhere along the line named it Messiah of Evil. But we, when we were casting at first, it was called Blood Virgin. But then the casting director said, we're not getting any actors who are going to come to what sounds like a porno film. And we said, well, okay. So we came up with a really pretentious kind of title from a poem by William Butler Yeats about the Second World War called The Second Coming. So we did that for a while. The clapboard actually says The Second Coming.
Woo!
Yeah.
This is original. This is the original one, right?
That's the original one, yeah.
Wow.
And we still couldn't get any actors because they thought it was about a porno film.
So you're 2 for 2 on like
Yeah.
films that sound like porno films.
We gave up on titles. Yeah. But the film, it was pretty obvious. It was made for not a lot of money, very little money, but a lot of amphetamines. Which was all we could offer a lot of people who were working on it because, well, originally what happened is I had done some work and Gloria was working as assistant editor and I was, a friend of mine on the John Millius wrote a script for AIP, which is mostly motorcycle and family. And John went on to write Apocalypse Now. That's why the lead in Apocalypse Now is Willard, you know, which was a nice gesture. But what was the question?
Oh, I guess what was the origin of the story for The Second Coming? What was kind of your influences or ideas on coming up with a movie, or this movie, I should say?
Well, it was some rich. We had John and I had written The Devil's Eight, which was a low budget film, which was made by AIP. So this agent said, well, I think I can get you some other money, that there are these rich Texas kids who want to be, you know, in the film business. And we said, okay, and they said they managed to convince their parents that if they had $100,000, you know, they can make a movie. So he said, are you guys interested? Do you think you could do this? And I said, we can do anything. Sure. And do you like horror films? I said, well, I like H.P. Lovecraft, so that was an influence, I guess. But what happened was that $100,000 became $80,000 because they re-roofed their house and built a swimming pool. But we managed to, almost everybody who worked on this film became incredibly successful later on. It's bizarre. But for this, it was amphetamines, which was attraction and something to do. So everything was you know, odd about it. The house was professor at USC where I went to school, he was renting this incredible house in Echo Park, and the people were going away on vacation. And I said, well, is the house going to be empty? And he said, well, yeah, I'm going to go away. And I said, well, maybe, we want to shoot this little movie. So could we possibly use the house? And he said, yeah. And we tore the house apart. I mean, you could see that when these people came back, they were not at all happy. They said, what's with the paintings on the wall? And it looks like there's been a fire. Was there a fire? Well, the fire was an interesting thing because when we made the film, the Stuntman's Association had for years been the fraternal order of stuntmen. And then some young guys got together and said they were going to do Stunts Unlimited, and which was going to be an opposition stunt thing. And if they do for free, and so they jumped through the windows, and then one of their members, the initiation was he did the fire stunt. And I said, are you sure that's going to be okay? We're going to do this indoors. And he said, yeah. So they put glue all over him, which was highly flammable. And I was sure we were going to go to jail. I mean, there's no way this was going to work. But anyway, so they lit him on fire, and he was staggering around, bumping into things. I thought, oh shit, the whole house is going to. And then I got worried. I said, is he all right? And the guy said, yeah, he's adapting. I said, it doesn't look like it. It looks like he's burning up. And so they went in with fire extinguishers, put him out, and then they had a big party. They said, well, you're officially
I was gonna say, rewatch the ending when people were crashing through those windows and stuff.
Yeah.
They were bouncing pretty hard off the walls.
I don't know what they were doing. I guess it was amphetamines.
So, while we're doing this Q&A, I'm just gonna casually toss these out.
Oh, that's right.
That's where last question we go. It's gonna just be like the movie now. I'm sorry, Willard.
So we also discovered there was this kid who was a lot like Steven Spielberg without talent. He would make movies in his backyard, and somebody told me that this kid has come up with a great blood that is different than Max Factor, which was by that time very expensive blood. And we said, well, maybe we'll tell everybody he did it if he'll do the blood for the movie. And so we call him Bud Blood, and he was about 16 and crazy, but he came up with this really great looking blood, which we use a lot of, and he got a job off the film too. Everybody else did too. The list of people who worked on the film is pretty amazing.
Now, I do want to mention Walter Hill appears in this movie, right?
The guy running in the beginning is Walter Hill. Yeah, you don't know what he's running from in particular until the film editor's little niece splits his throat, and there were a lot of the extras and stuff were friends and people we had gone to film school.
Now, I guess it's online, and I'm going to ask you if this is true or not. Was it a lot of like NASA employees that were like the extras in the movie? That's what it says online.
Well, no, it wasn't. Well, for us it was lucky. There was some weird downturn in the aerospace industry. So all these guys, not only were they out of work and they were, getting bored and they had money, they had suits and they wore, and the rest of the people were mostly my relatives, my grandmother and my mother. So yes, we had a lot of out of work aerospace people who end up, well, Anitra Anitra, they end up chasing her.
Yeah.
She was a model, and she was really very, very sweet. And later she got into environmentalism in Santa Barbara. But she would, on The Price is Right, you know, the girls would say, well, this beautiful car is gonna be yours, and not only that, but that. And so she said, you know, I'm gonna do it on the Johnny Carson show. So we were shooting, and we plugged in the television set, which was a long time ago, and we said we're all gonna watch Anitra. So Anitra goes on the show, and to give Johnny Carson the advertisement that was coming up, which was, he'd always had a cute model and stuff. So she gave him the stuff, and she said, well, he said, well, Anitra, what are you doing? And she said, well, I'm doing a movie. And he said, well, that's good. What's it called? And she said, it's called The Second Coming. And so the audience starts to laugh, you know, and he said, what kind of film is that? And she said, no, it's a horror film. It's a scary film. And he says, well, what are you doing? And she says, well, I'm chased in a supermarket by these weird guys. And they eat me. So the audience went crazy, and his eyes are, Johnny Carson says, well, we're gonna cut to a real commercial now.
I think the irony would have been if it was an actual Ralph's commercial that came along right after.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I do want to talk about a couple sequences. You're just getting around the Ralph sequence, and there's also the great movie theater sequence, which are really, really effectively well done. Can you talk about, like, as you were, like, from writing to directing them and, like, kind of staging? Because the movie theater one's extra creepy because the way they just come in, like, one at a time and just start.
That was an homage, actually, to Alfred Hitchcock and the Birds, because while he's, you know, in the scenes, there's more and more birds all the time into the trees and stuff. And we said it'd be great if she goes to the movie theater and nobody's there, and slowly, and somebody else, you know, this film was sold, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, so somebody else found some footage of a Western with, what's his name? Sammy Davis Jr. of all people. So anyway, that's playing in the background, but it, you know, we didn't do that. But yeah, everything was kind of haphazard and lucky and amphetamines.
I know there's some filmmakers in the crowd tonight. Yeah, just pay people with amphetamines. It's how you make art now. But no, I do think it's really effective, and I know, like, there's a very kind of dreamlike quality to all. And like when we get to, you mentioned the house, like those collage and the artwork, was that stuff that was just like kind of, was it right there, or was it stuff that was put up by the production design and all that?
No, the house was a house in Echo Park that was mammoth and very interesting, and nobody had lived there for a long time. And English, one of my English teachers at SC said, you know, there's this great house. And this was the beginning of drugs, sort of. So from the TAs and the English teachers, you got all the grass. So he would have little parties, and it was very serious in those days when you all got loaded. You sat around in a circle, and you smoked and you passed it on and stuff. So he said he was going on vacation, and you know, we wouldn't have the parties anymore. But I said, what about the house? Is anybody gonna be in the house? He said, the owners won't be back. So we said, great. And how long will you be gone? He said, about a month at the most. And we said, well, could we shoot a movie there, do you think? And he said, shoot, well, yeah, I guess so. But if you wreck anything, I'm not responsible. So we got the house for nothing, and the interiors, the exteriors was another house in Malibu. But that was another break. We got that wonderful house. So we got Jack Fisk, who is a really I have a list here of the people who worked on this film.
If you wanna go ahead and read Willard, please do.
It was amazing. They all, they all worked again. Yeah, just want to hear homeless for a second. I'm supposed to be writing an article, so I've got a lot of notes here. I had a stroke, which I only say because that way people treat me, you know, nicer. And also, I can't remember anything. Anyway, Jack Fisk did, well, before that, we had some really strange. One day, just before we started shooting, we got this strange phone call. Somebody wanted to talk to me. And they said, it was a guy, and he said, you're making a movie. And then we said, yeah. And he said, with Michael Greer? And I said, yeah. He says, you know about Michael Greer, don't you? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, he's a female impersonator. I said, Michael Greer's a female. And this proved to be true. And he said, yeah, he's really famous. He's most famous for doing Betty Davis. And I said, well, he's about 6 foot. He's very tall. Betty Davis was, yeah, he was brilliant though. So I think it was a guy who had a grudge, or he was a jilted lover or something. And he said, so you're really going to use him? I said, yeah, we're going to use him. And I never told Michael. I never said we got this warning from this weird guy who said, don't hire Michael Greer. You know. But the thing that was fun was using the scene with, what's his name? Who's
Elijah Cook Jr.?
Elijah Cook Jr. Well, originally that was supposed to be Hank Warden. And what it was a takeoff on a scene from the John Ford Searchers movie. And Hank Warden in that movie plays an insane guy who's been captured by the Comanches. And they don't kill him because they think he's so odd and he's fun for them and he says crazy things. And so I found out that Hank Warden was available. I said, this would be great because he could do the same thing, sit by the empty television, and you'd think he's crazy. And the day before shooting, his wife calls and said, Hank's not going to do the movie. I said, why? And she said, because I won't let him. And she said, I think it's a terrible movie, and you've got this guy in bed with 2 girls, and Hank doesn't need this at this point in his career, and you don't need him. Then I found out Elijah Cook Jr., who was an equally wonderful actor, was available, and so that role went to him instead. But what was the question?
You were just you were just talking about all the famous people, the people that worked on this movie.
Yeah, well, Jack Fisk, who was our art director. Well, I've got a list here too. The editors. One of the editors was an old friend of ours, Billy Weber, and he did Messiah. Well, while we were making it, it was called The Second Coming, I guess. Somebody else gave us Messiah of Evil. So one of the 4 or 5 people who bought it.
Do you want to, before we get into do you want to hear some of the other titles this movie's had?
Well, one of the catches titles I thought was Dead People.
Dead People. Dead People's the one we showed. It was also Night of the Damned, Return of the Living Dead, which you got in trouble with.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Screaming Dead.
Yeah.
And I think in England it was called Swamp of the Dead at some point.
Swamp of the Dead.
There's no swamp in Malibu, but I don't know.
So anyway, Billy Weber was one of our 2 editors, and he lived through this, and then he did things like Top Gun, 48 Hours, The Warriors, Days of Heaven, Midnight Run, Thin Red Line. And Walter Hill, of course, went on to a huge career after having his throat slit. But he did 48 Hours and The Driver. And these are all friends of ours who made it out of this movie. Anyway.
Here, you need to grab something?
No, yeah, maybe.
All right.
So, oh, and then, well, we talked about Michael's career. Joy Bang was interesting because she presented herself as sort of a Warhol girl, you know. And I don't know if she ever was really or not. And she said, you know, that my name, Joy Bang, is not a joke. And I said, well, no. And she said, my husband is Dutch, so it's really Bong. And so she wanted to be called Joy Bong all the time. So we called her Joy Bong. And Mariana Hill had been in, I found out she was available, and she was in a Howard Hawks movie called Red Line 7000. And she was wonderful. She was really fun. So that was Billy. The other editor became well, we lived for about 2 years after this movie with complications. We shot the film in
71.
Yeah, in 71, but we shot it in Techniscope, which George used in THX, and the French used a lot. They called it Franscope, but of course. But when Technicolor was the only place that could do it, so they would take a 35mm film and they cut it in half. So you got twice as much film on low budget meant a lot, and you ended up with a long horizontal scope. Yeah. So a lot of the French films, so you think they're in scope, but they're in Techniscope. And eventually, well, we had to sort of, they said we could have an editing room because Technicolor was trying to get over the stuffy kind of, well, Technicolor, you know. Yeah. They wanted to do little films, so they did our film, and we did some editing there. And then when we ran out of money, we stole the work print on a Sunday out of Technicolor. And we moved to my father's place. He had a hospital supply company in the valley. So at first we moved into my parents' house with Billy Weber and what's his name? The other editor.
Scott Conrad?
No.
Or is there another one?
Yeah, there's another one who's very famous avant-garde, anyway. Morgan Fisher. He went to film school with Gloria. Anyway, we went to my parents' house to edit, and I got a call, and they were just, I said, what's wrong? I said, your father wants you to move. He wants us to move out because his neighbor, we were doing the Mariana Hill scene where the father and they're screaming, and somebody started yelling from one of the neighbors, quit beating your wife. So we moved out, and we got next to a dog kennel, in the valley, and we edited there for a while, and there was a couple who would take their dog. It was a strange guy and this girl who looked sort of like an Indian, and they said, oh, they're trying to be singers, and it was who's the girl who played?
Sonny and Cher.
Yeah, it was Sonny and Cher. Yeah, they were just getting started, and so we'd say, are you really Indian? You know. But anyway, so we edited there for a while, and then even that money ran out, and that's when other people started buying the movie and doing different things with it.
So did you ever, like, just for clarity's sake, did you finish shooting the film as you had production-wise?
No, not at all. There was supposed to be a big wedding where she marries the dark stranger at the beach, and no, there were scenes missing, but that was the end of the money. So we left.
So this movie just basically changed hands from different like independent
Right.
distributors over and over.
Then at the end, there was a lot of lawsuits because of people not being paid, which was painful. And the drugs had run out by then. So we had to get a lawyer who went through the California Labor Relations, and because we were being sued, and he said, "Oh, have Gloria go." So Gloria had curly hair. She was small, and she looked like she was about 14, because they had gotten all these people who wanted to. They were very upset that they hadn't been paid properly. And he said, "I want you to go. Don't go with Willard. Go alone. When you walk in the door, and you know, look like a little girl," which she did. And so that was the end of that. We didn't have any more problems with the labor relations. But
You talk more. This makes it more fun. So as you're saying, you basically got around the labor relations. At what point, because obviously you and Gloria wrote American Graffiti, and you did some work with George and all that.
yeah.
Like, how often did this movie pop back up, and how often did it try to come back and like kind of come back on your more current success in a way?
And work on it some more?
Oh no, not at work on it, but as it was getting re-released, did it put it like from the people who brought you American Graffiti? And stuff
Yeah,
like
there
that?
was stuff like that. Then there was also rude stuff, and I think it started to get a following. And so when Woody Allen made Annie Hall, he had this montage of how tacky LA was, and you could make a right turn on a red light, you know. And he goes past this thing, it's this Messiah of evil, you know, it's a big billboard. And there was a review, I still have it somewhere. This guy wrote, "Yeah, if only Woody Allen could make a film as great as Messiah." Anyway. Oh, and Gloria's brother, who was a cameraman, did a brilliant job.
That's what I was saying. The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous
Yeah,
on this.
he did the Blues Brothers, he did, well, he did a lot of them. I have a list somewhere.
Baby Geniuses.
Baby. Yeah, he did Baby Genius. Yeah, and then he did that wonderful film where they recreated The Bride of Frankenstein, where Billy.
Working the metal too hard.
Gods and Monsters.
Gods and Monsters is a wonderful movie. It's absolutely great, and he shot that, and it was about the making of, well, James Whale was gay, and so it was a big deal. And he shot that, and he shot some other things for him, I think. But, and Blues Brothers, other things.
Well, I think we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to ask you, just in closing thoughts. This movie is 50+ years on. Like, how, reflecting on it, like then and now, how do you feel about it, like now as like part of your filmography and part of like your catalog of the films you worked on?
Well, it's it's more fun to remember it than to live it. But no, it was really great. It was an extension of film school. I mean, it was a weird thing where let's make a movie. That was it.
That was it. That's beautiful. Willard, thank you so much for your time. Come back and do this. And at first, I think you were like, "Oh, but I'm glad you came out and did this."
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate what you guys are doing. The movies, I mean, it's amazing to see these movies again on the big screen is a real treat.
Excellent, and love to have you back again for something else.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.